President Dr. Muiz and Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayaka holds official talks where Maldives reaffirms its long-standing support for the Palestinian cause at a high-level international conference on the two-state solution. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to PSM News in English with me, Abdullah Ahil. And now the news in detail. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz and Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayaka holds official talks reaffirming their commitment to strengthening bilateral cooperation. The discussions were part of official talks held during the Sri Lankan President's ongoing state visit to the Maldives. The bilateral discussions, which were led by President Dr. Muiz and President Dissanayaka, took place at the President's office. During the talks, President Dr. Muiz highlighted the close diplomatic ties between the two neighboring countries, which have spanned 6 decades. He also emphasized the strong people-to-people ties and acknowledged the valuable contribution of the Sri Lankan workforce to the Maldives' development. The official talks concluded with both leaders reaffirming their commitment to enhancing bilateral cooperation across a wide range of areas, including capacity building, education, climate action, fisheries and agriculture, and food security, as well as maritime safety, air connectivity, youth development, and sports. Maldives and Sri Lanka signed an agreement to offer cooperation and assistance in diplomatic training between the two countries. The two countries also signed a treaty to offer mutual legal assistance on criminal matters. The MOU and treaty was signed between the two countries during the ongoing official visit to the Maldives by the President of Sri Lanka, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, on the invitation of President Dr. Mohammad Muiz. The Memorandum of Understanding on Diplomatic Training and the Exchange of Information and Documents was signed between the Foreign Service Institute of Maldives, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Maldives, and the Bandaranaike International Diplomatic Training Institute of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka. The MOU was signed on behalf of the Maldives by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Abdullah Khalil, while his Sri Lankan counterpart, Vijita Herat, signed for Sri Lanka. The MOU outlines cooperation in diplomatic training, knowledge sharing, and the exchange of institutional resources and documentation. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the MOU is in line with President Dr. Mohammad Muiz's vision to develop and enhance the skills of diplomats to effectively implement the country's foreign policy in the international fora. The President's office said the signing of the MOU underscores the commitment of both nations to deepen collaboration in the fields of diplomacy, further reinforcing the long-standing bilateral ties between the Maldives and Sri Lanka. While the treaty was also signed on behalf of the Maldives by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Abdullah Khalil, while his Sri Lankan counterpart, Vijita Herat, signed for Sri Lanka. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, negotiations for the treaty between the two countries began in 2011. The treaty, which has since been endorsed by the cabinet, aims to strengthen legal cooperation between the two countries by facilitating assistance in criminal investigations, prosecutions, and the exchange of evidence and information. The ministry added the treaty stipulates the cases submitted will be received, examined, and processed by the central authority established in the respective country. President Dissanayaka's 3-day official visit takes place against the backdrop of a diplomatic milestone, the 60th anniversary of formal relations between the Maldives and Sri Lanka, established on the 26th of July, 1965. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz recognizes the importance of people-to-people connections with neighbors Sri Lanka and acknowledges the positive contributions made by the communities residing in each other's countries. In the President's statement to the press at the joint press conference with the visiting President of Sri Lanka, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, President Dr. Muiz highlighted the rich and vibrant connection between our people as central to the close neighborly relations between the Maldives and Sri Lanka. In the statement, the President reflected on the two agreements signed between the two countries, saying that they underscored the shared commitment to further strengthening the close ties between the two countries. He said the Treaty on Mutual Legal Assistance will help address address any procedural delays in legal matters, while the MOU between the Foreign Service Institute of Maldives and the Bandaranaike International Diplomatic Training Institute will pave the way for enhanced training opportunities and skills development of our diplomats. President Dr. Muiz also highlighted that during the discussions with his Sri Lankan counterpart, they explored avenues to expand cooperation across a wide range of areas, including trade, defense, education and vocational training, youth and sports, environment, fisheries and agriculture. The president during the discussions had commended President Dissanayaka for the progress made in overcoming the recent economic challenges faced by Sri Lanka, expressing confidence that under his leadership, Sri Lanka will continue on a path towards a more resilient and inclusive economy. This is President Dissanayaka's first state visit to the Maldives since assuming office in September 2024. Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayaka highlights significant opportunities for Maldivian businesses to invest in Sri Lanka. He made the remarks at the joint press conference held with President Dr. Mohamed Muiz following official talks during his ongoing state visit to the Maldives. The Maldives delegation to the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution is led by Dr. Ali Nasir Mohammed, permanent representative of the Maldives to the President Dr. Mohamed Muiz hosts a state banquet in honor of President of Sri Lanka, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, during his official state visit to the Maldives. The banquet was attended by several dignitaries, including the special envoy of the President, Dr. Muhammad Wahid Hassan, Sri Lanka's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism, Vijita Herat, Acting High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to the Maldives, Timothy Dissanayaka, senior officials of the government of the Maldives, and distinguished members of the visiting Sri Lankan delegation. This is President Dissanayaka's first state visit to the Maldives since assuming office in September 2024. He arrived in the Maldives on Monday morning at the invitation of President Dr. Mohamed Muiz. The Maldives and Sri Lanka established diplomatic relations in 1965, and this year commemorates the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two nations. Pardon us. Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayaka highlights significant opportunities for Maldivian businesses to invest in Sri Lanka. He made the remarks at the joint press conference held with President Dr. Mohamed Muiz following official talks during his ongoing state visit to the Maldives. Speaking to the media in Sinhala, the Sri Lankan president expressed gratitude for the warm welcome he received upon his arrival in the Maldives. Referring to the long-standing ties between the two nations, President Dissanayaka said while Sri Lanka and the Maldives are close neighboring countries, both share many cultural similarities. He also pointed out linguistic connections, stating that the Sinhala and Divehi language share common origins. The Sri Lankan president said the country offers a favorable environment for business and investment and reaffirmed that the country will always welcome investors. He stressed the importance of strengthening bilateral relations between the two countries across various sectors and invited Maldivian businesses to explore investment opportunities in fisheries, infrastructure development, and information and communication technology. Noting the Maldives' international success in tourism, President Dissanayaka encouraged cooperation in the sector and invited the Maldives to share its expertise. He also invited Maldivian businesses to invest in Sri Lanka's tourism industry. In his speech, President Dissanayaka reaffirmed commitment to combating illegal fishing in the region and enhancing maritime safety and security. President Dissanayaka also extended a formal invitation to President Dr. Muiz to undertake a visit to Sri Lanka. As part of the visit, both nations engaged in high-level talks on cooperation across multiple areas. The Maldives reaffirms its long-standing support for the Palestinian cause at a high-level international conference on the two-state solution taking place at the United Nations headquarters in New York from July 28 to 29, 2025. The Maldives delegation to the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution is led by Dr. Ali Nasir Mohammed, permanent representative of the Maldives to the United Nations. The Maldives will deliver a statement at the conference during the plenary session, reaffirming the principled and long-standing support for the rights of the Palestinian people. The Maldives' participation underscores steadfast support for multilateral efforts aimed at achieving peace, stability, and justice for the Palestinian people. The Maldives continues to advocate for the realization of an independent and sovereign state of Palestine in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions and based on the pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Convened under the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 7981 titled Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine, the conference provides an important platform for reaffirming international consensus on the two-state solution. The conference is co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia. Prior to the plenary session, a ministerial high-level meeting will be held to present and discuss the outcomes of the working groups established for this conference. United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent meets with China's Vice Premier He Lifeng in Sweden for economic and trade talks aimed at resolving long-standing disputes that have fueled a trade war between the world's top two economies. The talks lasted more than 5 hours and concluded with negotiators departing Rosenbad, the Swedish Prime Minister's office, without addressing reporters. The discussions are expected to resume on the 29th of July. China is facing an August 12 deadline to reach a durable tariff agreement with President Donald Trump's administration after Beijing and Washington reached preliminary deals in May and June to end weeks of escalating tit-for-tat tariffs and a cutoff of rare earth minerals. Trade analysts said another 90-day extension of a tariff and export control truce struck in mid-May between China and the United States was likely. An extension would facilitate planning for a potential meeting between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping in late October or early November. South Korean Finance Minister Koo Young-chul says he would try to derive a mutually beneficial trade agreement with the United States in comments ahead of his departure to Washington to meet U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Seoul officials are scrambling in an all-out push to clinch a trade deal ahead of an August 1st deadline to avert punishing tariffs threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump against the country's key industrial exports to the United States. South Korea's finance minister Koo's plan to travel to Washington last week for talks with Bessent was postponed due to the U.S. Treasury chief's scheduling conflict. Koo also said he would be joining Industry Minister Kim Jung-kwang and Minister of Trade Yo Hung-koo, who have been holding talks with U.S. officials, including Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, for an all-out response. Dozens of ministers gather at a United Nations conference to urge that the world work toward a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians, but the U.S. and Israel boycotted the event. The 193-member UN General Assembly decided in September 2024 that such a conference would be held in 2025. Hosted by France and Saudi Arabia, the conference was postponed in June after Israel attacked Iran. Addressing the conference, Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud urged all countries to support the conference goal of a roadmap laying out the parameters to a Palestinian state. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot told the conference, quote, "We must work on the ways and means to go from the end of the war in Gaza to the end of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict at a time when this war is jeopardizing the stability and security of the entire region," unquote. President Emmanuel Macron said France intends to recognize a Palestinian state in September at the annual gathering of world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly.
Precisely because of the grim realities, we must do even more to realize the two-state solution. Today's conference is a rare and indispensable opportunity. We must ensure that it does not become another exercise in well-meaning rhetoric. It can and must serve as a decisive turning point, one that catalyzes irreversible progress towards ending the occupation and realizing our shared aspiration for a viable two-state solution.
The UN has long endorsed a vision of two states living side by side within secure and recognized borders. Palestinians want a state in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, all territory captured by Israel in the 1967 war with neighboring Arab states. The UN General Assembly in May last year overwhelmingly backed a Palestinian bid to become a full UN member by recognizing it as qualified to join and recommending the UN Security Council reconsider the matter favorably. The resolution garnered 143 votes in favor and 9 against. The General Assembly vote was a global survey of support for the Palestinian bid to become a full UN member, a move that would effectively recognize a Palestinian state after the US vetoed it in the UN Security Council. North Korea state media KCNA reports that the DPRK's administration says the United States must accept that reality has changed since the country's summit meetings in the past and no future dialogue would end its nuclear program. Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who is believed to speak for his brothers, said she conceded that the personal relationship between Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump is not bad. Asked about the North Korean statement, a White House official said Trump was still committed to the goal he had for the three summit Kim in his first term. At their first meeting in Singapore, summit in Hanoi next year broke down due to a disagreement over removing international sanctions that had been imposed against Pyongyang. Lorena Wiebes prevails in a chaotic sprint to claim victory in the third stage of the Tour de France Femmes, edging fellow Dutch rider Marianne Vos, who took the overall lead after a 163.5-kilometer ride from Le Gacilly to Angers. Sprint specialist Wiebes, who narrowly lost stage 2 to Mavi Garcia, made an explosive push for the finish as a crash in the final 4 kilometers temporarily took out several riders, including 2023 champion Demi Vollering. Opening stage winner Vos lost a photo finish to Wiebes but reclaimed the yellow jersey from Kim Lecourt-Peinard, who led the general classification after second stage on 27th of July but dropped to second with a 6-second deficit. The stage, mostly on a flat terrain, began without Giro d'Italia winner Elisa Longo Borghini, who withdrew from the race due to a stomach infection. 4 riders made an early attack to form the leading pack, with Alison Jackson, EF Education Oatly, winning a mountain sprint to the top of Côte de la Richardière. But others slowly caught up, with Lari Kopecky expertly leading her teammate Wiebes to the front, setting up the final sprint just before the crash derailed a number of riders behind them.
I actually didn't know this crash was happening because I was so focused to what was happening in the front, and the corners were quite tricky. But I hope all the riders are okay who are involved in this crash, and yeah, it was a bit chaos in the final. I mean, all the day it was quite big roads, and then the final was chaos.
New Zealand's Ali Wollaston finished third as her teammate Vollering, who recovered from the crash, remained in contention in the general classification, sitting 19 seconds behind Vos. The tour continues today on the 29th of July with stage 4, a 130.7-kilometer ride from Saumur to Poitiers through another mostly flat terrain. The North Pole Marathon concluded on July 13th this year, but the annual race on the world's northernmost point is also a scientific expedition to battle climate change in the Arctic. The North Pole Forum, a scientific initiative by the marathon organizer Runbuck, offered the runners an opportunity to learn more about the North Pole's ice sheets, the challenges around the region's preservation and development. The forum played out as a series of talks by global Arctic experts aboard the French icebreaker cruise ship Le Commandant Charcot that carried the runners both to and from the North Pole Marathon. Veteran Arctic explorer Peter Damisch, who leads the ship's scientific expedition, added that the French vessel has been gathering precious scientific data like water samples from both at the pole and along the voyage. The forum's lineup went beyond scientists, with speakers such as Jennifer Spence, the director of the Arctic Initiative program and an expert on governance and rights. Spence highlighted that the onus of collecting data and reducing climate change in the Arctic should be a shared global responsibility. With Russia claiming almost 50% of the Arctic Ocean coastline, Spence highlighted the need for Russia to expand its global cooperation with other Arctic countries to collectively combat climate change. The environmental crisis in the Arctic also influences the insurance sector, Baltic Insurance Services CEO Rob Schinek said during a talk at the forum.
That we have uniquely on board this vessel a wet scientific lab and a dry scientific lab. We maintain a team of scientists throughout our voyage from the very beginning. We've been taking water samples. I just spoke to the team this morning, and they were so proud to bring up, they had shown me the profile of the work that we had done at the North Pole overlaid against all the other data sources on the North Pole, which strangely enough aren't that many. So the opportunity to have a team go up to the North Pole, the expense covered, and to get that scientific data, not just at the pole itself, but along the way, is truly precious, not just to us, but for the world community that will share that data.
Schinek added that the insurance industry is trying to find solutions to climate change, be it the melting of polar ice caps in the North Pole or wildfires and hurricanes elsewhere. The North Pole currently grapples with rising temperatures, with a 2025 World Meteorological Organization report suggesting that the Arctic is warming 3 times faster than the global average rate. And that's all the news we have for today. We'll be back with any further updates. Until then, I'm Abdullah Ahil from PSM News.